Guys, intro time.
Wait, which intro?
The wisdom check.
Oh, good.
Wait, no. I thought we were keeping the old intro. What's wrong with the old one? People like that one.
It was too long.
Yeah.
Too many fucking gifs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But can we keep the part where I yell more?
No.
But it's the intro to end all intros.
I got, 2 lines last time?
Do you want more lines, Tim?
Well, no, not really.
In a world without answers.
Yeah.
Wait, you want to start with that?
Here we go. Exactly like last time.
Wait, okay, so we're doing the exact same way? Let's start with Smoky Bar.
No. It's a new season. We have to have a new intro.
More.
Not sure why we thought this would go any differently.
Oh, well. Welcome, everyone, to the Wisdom Check, where Jeff and Dustin welcome a guest every week to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. Welcome.
This is ridiculous. I'm starting the stream now.
Wait, where's my die at? Well, we can't start until I botch. And it's not an intro unless I'm botching.
You're on.
And we should be on.
Are we live?
Hope so.
Is this working?
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. It's another episode of the Wisdom Check. As per usual, I am Jeff over here. My co-host on the other side is Dustin.
Hey, yeah, we're doing.
And we are joined tonight by Scott, and we're going to be talking a bit about Shadowrun. So, hello and welcome. Glad to have you. So, we are going to get into the Shadowrun nuts and bolts here as we kind of get going. But the beautiful thing is, everyone is a gamer here, and at some point, you got to start somewhere. You found some people, hopefully, that knew a thing or two, or maybe you just found yourself in the hobby on your own. But that origin story always helps other new people get into the hobby. So we like to ask you, how did you get started?
I started basically being an obnoxious little brother.
Mm-hmm.
My brother and his friends would all game out in our garage, and I'd creep out there and I'd say, "Hey, you guys want a soda? You guys want some chips? You guys, can I roll the die? What are we doing?" And then slowly weaseled my way in, and eventually my brother's friends let me play with them a little bit because my brother's 8 years older than me. He was like 16, I was 8. I was really obnoxious. They thought they were the coolest thing in the world. I was an obnoxious little kid. But it grew in me, and I kept playing with them on and off. And then eventually, when I was in my early teens, I had an accident where I messed up part of my hand. Fingertips.
Gotcha. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fireworks when I was a kid, and when I was down, I needed something to do, and I had already gotten into D&D before that.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother introduced me to Shadowrun, so I started painting miniatures left-handed.
Wow.
And just dove headfirst into that, thanks to a fantastic game master, and have since grew my desire to play it, to run it. I won a contest to get in as a writer, and I've just dove headfirst into that side just to, get to play in the world and see my name out there and see my ideas at tables.
That's pretty fantastic. So you got in with a contest. So how did this contest work?
What was it, 2013 or 14?
Mm-hmm.
Shadowrun put out a thing for writers to pitch to write their tournament for Gen Con. We're all gamers, we know Gen Con.
Mm-hmm.
And I managed to win the pitch, so I wrote the tournament for that year. And then have actually since then ended up writing 5 more of them. It's almost like they sneak you in and convince you to write one, and then they're like, "Hey, you won a contest. You want to write it again?" I'm like, "What do I get for this?" "You get to write the tournament."
The prestige of a year's worth of work, right?
You get exposure.
Yeah.
Exposure.
I get to write it, and slowly you build up doing it enough, and you do get paid.
Mm-hmm.
You never don't get completely paid, but after a while, it was tough because it was like, I want to play in the tournament instead of writing it. So every once in a while, every few years, I'd be like, no, I don't want to write it.
Nice.
And a couple of those years that didn't work. It just got later and like, hey, no one else has said they'd write this. Will you write it for us?
So what's your approach to writing a tournament game for something like Gen Con? Because we just experienced a tournament game last week for DCC, but I'm interested to hear how Shadowrun handles a tournament.
We know that for the tournaments at Gen Con, we get 2 nights. So you end up writing a story broken into 2 parts. Sometimes it's written in 2 very different parts. Like the first night of it is one set of characters, and then all of a sudden there's a time jump. Other times the first night is kind of that build up to the, oh, crap. And then we slide into the second night where it's a lot of running and gunning, and you just kind of wear the teams down. One of the recent ones is, just an edge murdering monster where how much? You started with 6 edge? Well, now you have 1. Or maybe you won't make it through the next time someone tries to shoot you. I think we tear through it. But a lot of it is serial. It's timing. That's the biggest thing. Is you only have a 4-hour block, which the game time is really only about 3 hours. With the intros, getting to learn, the wrap up at the end. Half the time on night 1, we're all like, okay, let's get you. Let's move this through. How's the story going? How do you want this? And so we have to do. It's a lot of timing, and I say I don't get to play in the tournament. I get to run the tournament, usually a half a dozen to a dozen times.
Right. Yeah.
Prior to it ever going anywhere. Yes, my gaming friends are all like, oh God, we're doing this again. Okay, all right. We'll pretend we don't know what's going on. I'm like, no, guys, we just need to time the battles, time the rolls. Come on, help out here.
I was going to ask about that because that's really hard to dial in on your home games. For tournament play, there's so many different types of players. There's so many different skill sets that come to the table, personalities, whether they get along. I played some of these convention games. Sometimes they go a little off the rails. And I imagine getting those times takes a lot of experience. I mean, how long did it take you to really hone that skill set?
The first one was pretty terrible. I won't lie. The story was cool, but there was a lot of compression that occurred. Yeah. But I think I'm on my 5th one, and writing them is we only need, instead of the first one, the play tests were over the dozen mark, and now I can usually run 4 to 5 times, dial in, basically trim back on enemies and on combat, or look at what the characters have to offer and the different ways they play together. And a lot of it is that we end up, by the time I'm done, if I can run the whole game in 2 hours at home, I know it'll run in 4.
Right.
Because my friends aren't like, we're not going to all I'm not role-playing my character, having conversations with you. I don't want to anymore. We've had this conversation over and over. It's like Groundhog's Day.
Man. Yeah, I can imagine. It's really fascinating how much more time, gets taken up with roleplay with certain groups, our groups in particular. We could turn an hour session into a 16-hour marathon for no apparent reason, which is nonsense.
That is very correct.
Yeah, that dungeon crawl we did this week was very much like that.
We just did a DCC one, and my guys role play so much. I was telling the other judges, the other streams we were playing against, I was like, I'm telling you, I'm afraid we won't get past the first 2 rooms because they're just going to sit around and role play for 4 hours, and the time will be up. But they got their shit in gear. They got through the end of the first floor, so they got into night 2, and then they got ruffle stomped. So
they
did all right. They could definitely role play. And do you get that a lot of tournaments? Do you get people who start role playing too much, and all of a sudden you're like, you're out of time, my friends?
Yeah. So with Shadowrun in particular, it's a very different style of game. In terms not just style, but setting. Mechanics, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, it's a cyberpunk style game, but in this case, it's got magic added in there. So what drew you initially to it? Was that always just like, this is the game I'm going to, this is the one I live in, or were there other games you kind of got into on the side?
It started with Dungeons and Dragons, but because that was so much my brother's game, when he introduced me to his friend Tom, who ran the Shadowrun game, I just am like, okay, this is I love this setting. I like the dystopian future. I like the combination of, magic with, metal and steel and cyberware and fast cars. It was just a cool mix. And then from there, I've played across the board. I've dabbled all over Rifts. My top 3, I always let some Shadowrun's always number 1.
Of course.
Number 2 is actually Deadlands, and I like playing the classic version just because chips and cowboy hats, and it's just, and poker cards. It was just something like really, you felt it. But that's a great game to do a lot of role playing in because combat takes forever.
Yeah, it sure does.
I'm like, what card are we on? I don't remember. Who wants to go next? And I love the Star Wars setting because I'm a dork, so I like all the different Star Wars games. I've played a little bit of Pathfinder just for the little shot off of D&D.
Sure.
What else have I? Earth Dawn, because I played Shadowrun, and it was back in the days of FASA, so you had to dabble in both sides of the world. Yeah, it's like you've done this. Oh, okay, and I am the Shadowrun game master who at one point had my Shadowrunners go through a time portal and go back to Earth Dawn, and I've had it go the other direction.
Nice. Boy, that'd be a shock going forward.
Yeah.
There may be people in the audience here tonight who don't know anything about Shadowrun. Sounds strange as it may be. We have a lot of people coming in new to the hobby through 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons that are finding us and playing their first games. So that's one of the nice things about having varied guests on here, and in particular having you on here to talk about this particular subject. And I'm not positive, but I think your camera may have froze on us there for a second. Hopefully you're still there.
Did we lose him?
Looks like we lost connection. So it's
I lost him again.
While we wait for him to come back, we'll transition to a topic here, I guess. We'll come back to Shadowrun, I promise. But in the meantime, I guess we can kill some time talking about the tournament this weekend that we just had.
That's right. So if you're joining us here for the Shadowrun talk, we will get back to Scott here as soon as he reconnects. He had this problem right before we started as well, so hopefully he gets himself reconnected and he'll be right back. And hopefully it doesn't screw up our overlays too much, which I'm afraid it's going to. But nonetheless, us and 3 other streams are participating in a DCC tournament. Is the Gen Con 2017 dungeon, the Black Heart of Thaculon the Undying, and us and one of our fellow streams, Dragons in the Dining Room, we cleared floor 1. The guys at the Grouch Couch and our friends over at Defenders of Kobold were perhaps not quite so fortunate. The Defenders of Kobold, their DM Chuck is a monster in his own right.
A ruthless roller is what we like to call him.
Ruthless roller and shows no mercy. So I'm pretty sure, and I've said this a few times, I don't care what the scorecards say, I'm pretty sure that Chuck actually won the tournament. I mean, he's a judge. He's technically not supposed to win, but I'm pretty sure if there was a winner this weekend, it was Chuck. So, we had a lot of fun with it. My guys, like I said, they role play the shit out of things. Like, it doesn't matter. Oh, we even got Scott back here. So yeah, it was a good time. You can find the VODs for both of those here on Twitch for floor 1 and floor 2. Floor 2 is about half the length of floor 1.
I don't even think it was half the length. We got paid.
Oh, it was 2 hours. You guys really? Wasted 2 hours before I raffle stomped you in that room. But nonetheless, it was a beatdown too. It was brutal.
It went real fast. Yeah.
Yeah, like floor 1 we scored like 1,200 points, like right at 1,200 something, and in floor 2 they're like negative like 550.
we would have been better just to quit before we started.
If they would have just quit at the door, we'd be much better shape. But nope, they trudged on, and so there we have it. So, do you guys score your Shadowrun tournaments like that too? Is there like a point system?
There's always a point system for it. It starts out with a whole series of, you get role-playing points, completion points, teamwork points, and sometimes the teamwork and role-playing points are skewed based on how we made your characters, because all the characters are pre-made. So if you actually are playing a character who really shouldn't get along with someone else, and you decide to get along with them, you get dinged. And we have meetings beforehand to... It is. It's like, oh, 2 of the best friends sit down at the table. They both read their characters like, oh, I'm not supposed to like you. Have fun. That's role playing. And we've had great.
It's awesome. There's a role playing mechanic in there.
There really is.
Mm-hmm. And we go in beforehand. All the all the game masters end up getting the characters beforehand. So they can read the backgrounds, the story beforehand, so they can read through it. A lot of them actually are other play testers that we have run through it in the off season in between.
Nice.
But yeah, there's you got to score it. If it's a tournament, there's got to be a winner and a loser.
Needs to be, yeah.
Just curious how they did the scoring, because it's got to be a lot different than DCC. DCC is a very mechanical sort of thing, and Shadowrun's a very different style of game because it would just in the way that it runs is so different.
It does. It becomes very like our completion points are built on where you get in the story, your role playing, creativity, teamwork, all of that is built into. It is a little on the if your game master likes you and he thinks you did a really good job, he'll score you higher. If your game master's mean and evil, he'll score you lower. But we tend to every night, because we have the night 1 and night 2, we always keep the tables the same but switch the game masters around.
Yeah,
so it helps to balance it a little. Statistics, we probably need like 10 tables to even it all out, but
sure.
We don't have 10 nights of Gen Con to run a tournament in.
No.
Be happy if we had one this year.
Yeah, we get one night. Right now we're just hoping for one night.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
Absolutely.
With any night, I've been trying to convince my friends to be like, hey, can we just find someone with a big backyard and just a table in the middle and we just move towards table roll just so we're all in the same space?
Amen.
We just need bigger tables so we can all sit 6 feet apart.
There you go. Massive gaming tables tucked to the
Really big tables.
Absolutely.
Some table company is about to make that design, build a few, and then go under.
So someone put a call into Wormwood. This sounds like it's right up their alley. They can handle it, I'm sure. So
We'll have 6 players. We need 24 feet side. Okay, we can do that. Hexagonal. 6 feet between each person. You're all
beautiful.
And we'll even put a plastic shield in the middle. Like everything.
Oh, that'd be so good.
Yeah, see?
So I think when Shadowrun kind of first picked up, it was when I first got into Shadowrun or talked a little bit about it was like back in like the 90s.
Started in
the idea of the quote unquote dystopian future was talking about like today.
It is.
And I'm not saying that it hasn't gotten dystopian around here. Where do you write at from now? Like now we're here in 2020 and we're like, okay, how can we get more dystopian than we are now? Like, how do you write for the future?
We've currently had a couple of conversations where people are talking about, well, we should, one of Shadowrun's big historical points was a plague called Vitus that wiped out a portion of the population. And they're like, well, we should write about this. And other people are like, no, you shouldn't write about this. Calm down. Let's,
maybe a little too topical right now.
Right. Let's, but there's been a lot of things that when Shadowrun switched from 3rd to 4th, they switched to a wireless matrix because it matched better with the world. And while we writers behind the scenes tried to be like, well, this is the fluff of the corporations, easing restriction. We just had to go with, well, tech's a little hard to understand if you always have to plug into things. Yeah. But it also works well in that Shadowrun's history is as old as the game. The game started in 2050. In 1989, and it's now up to 2081, 2082. Yeah, I'm not sure what we get our. I'm writing a little ahead of, and I'm like, what's currently published? What am I writing? When one of our questions is always, what year are we in?
So,
what year am I writing in? What happened?
Absolutely. So, like one of the questions I was asking before we kind of froze up there, I was noticing. Some of our audience is brand new to role-playing in general, maybe coming here for the first time. We've got a lot of familiar faces right now, by the way, so hello, everybody. But maybe some of these people haven't experienced Shadowrun and don't know what the setting is or what they could come to expect from Shadowrun. I was wondering if maybe you can give a little brief rundown.
All right. So Shadowrun is a cyberpunk dystopian future setting. But right around... back in 2012, another one of those things that we went past and the world didn't awaken and all of us Shadowrun dorks were really upset. I didn't get to turn into an...
Can't believe it.
There was an awakening and magic came back to the world. And with magic came dragons and elves and orcs and trolls. And with all those also came a bunch of fantastical creatures. So the whole world changed. And as the world changed, politically, a lot of things began to occur, like corporations openly running the world, making rules that they could build their own armies, and the people began to be squashed down to that dystopian level. But you're literally, you think of your draconian masters. Your masters literally a dragon. Cyberpunk is one of the biggest companies in Shadowrun. It used to be the biggest. It's now number 2. If any Germans are watching this, yeah, I did that too. It's a poking point. We try and shuffle around the corporations, but let me finish my description of Shadowrun. What you'll expect to run into is you can be whatever you want. You would think of in both a fantasy or a cyberpunk setting. You could be your metalled out, cybernetic arms, Johnny Mnemonic, wires and twitches. You can be, what's a good example? I always use, the best martial artists in the world, where you watch them flip up in the air 10 feet and kick a board in half. Well, that's like a parlor trick for an adept, magicians who funnel their magic into their body. Or you could be a wizard. You could be slinging spells. You could be a shaman. You could be calling on the powers of nature to make your spells work. So you get this wide gamut. You could be a rigger, where you jack straight into a vehicle and you drive it and you feel it. The pumping of the engine is the pumping of your heart. The wheels spinning as you feel like you're running. You come out of it and your whole body gets taken over by it. But you can also go into the internet that way. In Shadowrun, it's the Matrix. But you go in complete. So you create teams, or you don't. You make really bad teams, and they don't get along. There's missing pieces, and disasters occur, like most role-playing games.
Almost always, yeah.
Like, why did no one play the rogue? We have to pick that lock. Well, somebody's going to break the door open. And so you build your team, and you have your electronic specialists, your hackers, your technomancers, your deckers. They're breaking into the electronic systems to block out cameras so you don't get seen, so the corporations don't come after you. And then your street samurais are punching out guards or jumping out of windows, and your wizards are casting all sorts of spells from invisibility to fireball. And you're playing in this fantasy, futuristic world that is tending a little more to look like ours. In fact, recently we did a Shadowrun crossover of a video game. There's several of them. There's a couple by Harebrained Schemes. They're awesome. And then I wrote for the one that was based out of Germany. And the book was Boston Lockdown. And I was writing it as Boston got locked down for the marathon incident. And I'm like, oh, this is terrible. This is not going to go well. And it was just weird because I had already written the book. This occurred, and I'm like, and that's exactly it. And it went pretty well. They locked it down in a pretty similar way to I did, off. But in a futuristic world, I had giant machines rolling and building walls because it's the future. You can. It just looks cool.
Gonna interrupt you for just a moment.
Here from
Go for it.
Lindy, 26 Raiders just joined. So welcome, Raiders. We are talking here to Scott Schletz. He's a writer for Shadowrun RPG. So we're talking with him a little bit about what Shadowrun is and what that world is like for those of you who maybe haven't had a chance to delve into Shadowrun before. So welcome, Raiders.
Yeah, welcome. And if you have questions, we do have a feature. You could spin our channel points, which look like one of our friends, Cameron's face. And there's an option on there to ask a wisdom check question. And so long as it's not super offensive, we'll ask it.
Not super offensive. A little offensive we might. Super offensive?
Little offensive goes just fine.
Just goes a long way,
There's a real fine line.
I think that's one of the things people forget sometimes about Shadowrun. If they have any exposure to Shadowrun, or when they hear about Shadowrun, they think about the street samurais and the deckers, things like that. I think they forget that there is that fantasy magic element to it. I don't know if it's because you can play magic in D&D, you can play magic in these other games. So when you go into this, it's like, well, what's the thing I can't do in those other games? I want to wire myself up and be a cyborg essentially. So I think people tend to want to gravitate to that, but it does have those shamanistic elements and magic elements. Like all that is still there too.
Yeah, and and it's really interesting because the way that they introduced the other races, I guess we'll call them in this case. It's not that they have a long history of existence. It's literally people just one day were like, I'm an orc now. well, hi, you're a troll. Cool. And you're a manticore? Like, I guess that's cool. Like, what happened? You know?
Yeah, they had a goblinization, and you go through this. Some of them, they're the first ones. It's this traumatic experience that you can build on as a character. You know, one day you just started to shift, and your whole body converted, and then you get the lucky ones like dwarves and elves who are just born, and it's like, oh, you're a dwarf, a little person. There you go. I'm sure there was some form, politically correctness that went on with them. And then the elves are actually supposedly, some of them are immortal, and they've lived through the time when there was no magic, because that's the other key of Shadowrun is magic goes up and down, and right now we technically should live in the time when there is magic.
Yeah, well, that'd be nice.
Because of their calendar, but we don't, unless they're hiding it from it. The government is hiding it from you.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Conspiracy is a really big deal in this setting. This is one of the things I really liked about Shadowrun, and just kind of the genre in general. But like, there's a lot of meat on the bone. There's a lot of interesting philosophical takes. There's a lot of political commentary. There's a lot of exploration on human nature, I guess. You get a lot of space to play in, and it's a really cool dynamic to it. And the party system, like you were describing, is baked into the cake already in a natural way. You're running in the shadows. You're doing a job. You're taking on what could be a sketchy thing. You might be a hero, but you're probably not.
Yeah, it's almost always you're the anti-hero. You're that classic new. You're a bad guy, but you're a good guy, but you're a bad guy. You're John Wick. Everybody wants to be John Wick,
right?
And you are. You're a whole team of John Wick. Until you meet the guy who's not John Wick, and he wants to be John Wayne in the old Western cowboy movies, and he's a white hat, and he doesn't want to do anything wrong, and he won't kill people, and you get that you get that cool dynamic within the game. When we were in almost every edition, we always write some form of world building piece that you talk about that. You openly discuss that this is a morally ambiguous game. Like, one of the big things in 5th edition was Shadowrun, shooting people in the face for money.
Yeah,
like that. Yeah. That's it's dark, but you need to make money, but you shoot people in the face. I'm like, they're bad people, and then so you get to actually have those nice conversations in writing, and you get to have those conversations on the internet now, and you talk to people, and you actually get to engage with them about these issues that not only do we face now, but we can put in our games. And you can always sit at that table and be like, who wants to ignore all the political and just shoot people in the face? I'm a murderer. How about, okay, let's go shoot people in the face. And then who wants to role play and get in the depth of their character and their traumas and what made them this way? And it's like, yep, over here. I'm like, okay, now how can both of you be at the same table? Let's figure this out. And that's the fun of it. That's the fun being on this side of the screen when you're the GM is you build that game, and Shadowrun allows it really well because it's not there's no real good cookie cutter for everybody. When they build their character, they get a role on the team, but they could have come to that role through a hard knock life. They could have come to that role because they don't want to work. They're a rich kid and they don't want to be in the corporation anymore, and they want to go play on the street. So there's a lot of options for the character themselves.
Yeah, and there's some interesting things that come up too, just in the sense of the technology, right? When you start to get into cyberware, and what goes into that. In previous editions, there was a lot of focus on, are you giving up a piece of who you are as you're replacing, your left hemisphere with a system ready to aim your gun for you, or you jacked up on so much adrenaline as it spikes through you here and there that you no longer interact with people in the same way. And it's
there have been. We add in. It comes in and out. Essence is the game mechanic that allows you to buy, get rid of parts of you and trade them for metal. And it's a game mechanic. It keeps you limited to a certain amount, so there's balance. But then we add in at various points and additions and try and explain it. The more of you is metal, the more detached you are from your humanity, from who the person you are. And you get people who role play that. You get other people who have like all sorts of metal in their body, and they're the friendliest, most wonderful people in the world. But it's role play. I've actually one of the, I don't remember which novel it was because I'm terrible at remembering novels. But one of the characters, he actually popped pills to like flatten himself out because he couldn't deal with his disconnection.
Oh,
and I was like, that's a really cool idea. Like, I'm so disconnected, I have to like completely flatten myself to be to interact with people, because if not, I wouldn't know how to interact. I'd be me in a social situation. Minus talking to you guys on here. I have a camera here.
Yeah, this is working out all right, I think. We got the right setup here. For the chat, by the way, I apparently forgot to set up the notifications for when you guys do things. So thank you for the bits there. Appreciate them, Z Damon. And thanks for the subscriptions and continuing that for over a year there, Jay Bruce. Much appreciated. So I mean, I just love... Yeah, Jay Bruce definitely.
Shadowrun on his channel every now and then. So if you wanted to watch some Shadowrun, Jay Bruce is a good place to go to find some.
Absolutely. There's some recent shows that have come through that have kind of danced around a lot of these concepts or introduced them in the mainstream a little bit. I would say currently Westworld would be an interesting example of one. Maybe it doesn't come across that way immediately, but as it kind of progresses, it rapidly runs into Shadowrun territory. And it's really neat. And then, of course, there was Bright for however well or not so well that one did, depending on who you ask. But I enjoyed it, and I thought that was pretty much Shadowrun, in a nutshell there.
Yeah, when I saw it coming out, I'm like, this is perfect. They even have some like the back end ads where it's one of the orcs in the show talking about playing Shadowrun. It's like, yeah, good job, guys, make you a little crack there. But it's a fantastic job. It makes a good connection for it. Mm-hmm. There's actually a company I'm currently connected to, Rem Alternus, who is working on developing a cyberpunk setting web series. They're recently filmed our trailer for it, which came out really cool. I was surprised. I've never been behind the scenes for anything being filmed.
Oh yeah.
And you're behind the scenes, and it's just repeatedly like, I'm cold. Okay, that looked cool for a second. I'm cold. That looked cool for a second. And then you sit there and stare like, oh my God, I just want to watch this scene over and over. And then you see what they do with it behind the scenes, and you're like, what? Where did that come from? Yeah. I was standing in a room with a couple boxes in a building, and this is amazing.
We got a redeemed question coming in here in the chat from our buddy Jay Bruce, again, big Shadowrun fan, says, what's your favorite part of the Shadowrun universe that you've written, if you're able to tell? That you're not on an NDA or something about here, I guess is what he's...
I recently actually asked of those above me, at what point can we disclose which parts we wrote? Mm-hmm. And they're like, whatever, once it's printed, you can say whatever you want, like, whether we're lying or not.
So what are you going to take credit for today, Scott?
What's your favorite thing? Well, one of the first things I always take credit for, because it only has my name on it, and some people hate it, some people like it, is the Boston lockdown, the lockdown book. The entire book was all written by me. 100% of the words in there are my fault.
Wow. Nice.
That's rare, isn't it? Mostly
it is. That's very rare.
So that's very rare.
Yeah, almost everything is multiple contributors. We all work together, but that was done in conjunction with the German game production company, and they needed a writer. And at the time, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll write it all." And that was, that was.
That's crazy.
There's a reason why we collaborate and we all write the books.
Oh yeah,
it's hard to write an entire book.
Can imagine. Yeah, how long
so
did that take?
What goes into one of these books? I mean, you have a story element, and then is there new mechanical stuff in there? Like you have to kind of have your foot in, like, or do you talk to someone else who's like, well, here's how you could do some of, like, you had to do the whole thing then in that way, like.
The one I did, I had to write the whole thing.
Ooh.
But luckily, I had already in the 5th edition of Shadowrun, I was allowed to, when I came on, I had enough, chops, enough credit, or I was dumb enough to take, large amounts of work.
Yeah.
And I actually got to write the second thing I'll take credit for is I wrote the combat chapter. So I always say,
wow,
what what almost everyone has read in the game, I wrote. So in the 5th edition,
people skip the story at the beginning. Are you suggesting that players do that?
Just just a little bit.
The lore doesn't always stick for everyone, you know.
Yeah, no. Oftentimes the lore is
They
best
can also tell
presented.
you how many attack actions they get before their initiative's over. They all know that.
I get 4, and then no, I still get to go. I get to go on 1. I just don't on 11. I wasn't wounded. I have systems to prevent my wound modifiers from going. But yeah, that's the second one because it's exciting to be have been able to write and integrate into writing the mechanics, which then makes every other book that I pitch to write for. It's like, well, I'll write my fluff and whatever mechanics we need, I'll write those too. Right now, I'm currently working on.
It's really nice when those are connected.
Yeah,
I've seen some books written. You got one person writing the fluff, and it describes something that they can do, and then immediately in the text for the ability it says you cannot do that thing. You're like,
yeah, they clearly the right and left hand didn't talk to each other in some of those.
And you always have that. You always have the third hand. You have the right hand, the left hand, and the artist hand that's somewhere over here.
Yeah.
Like, why did that get included in there? I'm like, because the artist thought it was cool. I'm like, oh, it works. Maybe we'll add that. Thank you, artists.
When the artist started on that portrait, you guys had written 15 words.
Yeah, exactly.
You've completed a book, and now it's going on page 5.
Yep.
Our chat's kind of going pretty well here tonight. So, Canadian Wolverine, what story were you most interested in? Like, which one caught your eye, so to speak? And we'll go and put that in the chat for us, and we'll recognize it.
Oh, well, obviously because I wrote Lockdown, the whole Monad and CFD situation. Back in D&D, I really enjoyed a story I wrote about a small town and what I called albino brain chiggers.
Okay.
And it started with crows and rats and wolves, where they would bite them, and these little maggot things would get in and get into their brain and start controlling people. And they were the albino brain chiggers, and there was a whole story that went along with it. And so when I got a chance to just go off the wall with something in Shadowrun at one point, that's where I went. I went with something that overwrote who you were. So, one day I'm me, the next day I spill something on me, or I eat something or drink something, or I'm in somewhere and I get exposed, and slowly something starts to rewrite my brain to write to write an artificial intelligence on there. And we've put it where it's the full-on split personality horror. We've put it on where the back one never lets the front one. Every time they go to sleep, they wake up and they do things, and they wake up exhausted, and they're like, God, I'm so tired, and I'm sleeping terribly. And then they're getting arrested, and they have footage of them murdering someone, and it's like, I was asleep.
So that's straight up Fight Club. I mean, straight up Fight Club. Only,
it is. It is straight up split brains.
Wow.
Let's see if we got an answer there.
I enjoyed that aspect.
Very cool.
I'm currently terrorizing the world with the sea dragon. It's my current amusement, and what I'm trying to build this little story arc on. Oh, but as I was going to say, one of the recent things that I wrote in, or one of the ones I'm working on right now, is a PDF line that we're working on that focuses on characters and specific types of characters, along with one of the meta types. Like right now, mine's is troll and athletes, which kind of makes sense. Trolls are big and athletic.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I'm directly building with the stories of each of these characters. I'm building their characters at the same time, and also because we're using this as a soft introduction for some of the meta variants. Like trolls also have cyclopes and minotaurs, giants. And we're doing that soft introduction with it, but I'm building that in, and each character's story builds in those little differences they have in them. So it's just a neat, because I know the rules, I can blend the two together, and it makes it easier, instead of, well, I'm going to write this cool story, and then I'm going to give this to this guy over here who knows rules, and hopefully it works, and it doesn't come back, like my editor saying, you can't write that. Don't put that there. Don't write that on.
So the answer we got from the chat here from Canadian Wolverine, by the way, was his favorite story was the novel Tales You Lose. So, very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just like to kind of get a little feedback from the chat sometimes. Always brightens things up. Yeah, I don't know, that whole brain thing it's an earworm now. It's stuck in there. Because there's so many of these things that could happen.
Jeff has a thing for things that take over the mind.
It drives me nuts.
It's a real soft spot for him. Something like that just eats away at him for days. So
it's a rough one. It's a good role playing opportunity because you get a chance to play both, play one going crazy. So mix the two, or you can take that chance or take that moment and be like, all right, this character's done. I'm going to go make a new one and let the GM play who I was, and let's see how we interact together and how this plays out. And it gives you that chance to role play and like pretend you don't know and investigate.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's so many good opportunities there. And, it could be done that way. It could be done with just technology. It could be done with magic. I mean, there's so many ways to kind of pull that kind of concept off in a good way. And Shadowrun just has all of them.
Yeah. One of the first ones. Yeah, one of the first ones was the insect spirits. They take over bodies, and they can look normal, but they're dark on the inside. I just wanted, when I did the CFD, I just wanted something that never really changes how you look. You always look the same. When we were doing the advertising things, we were allowed to write these little clips, and I killed myself. I wrote the story about Scott Schletz dying, and people were like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I probably shouldn't have." Well, but I admit it. I read it. It was fun. It's fun to kill yourself off and be like, "No, he's dead. He caught this disease, and he's toast now." It was just cool to kill yourself in the world. I killed so many other people in the world.
Morbid turn.
Someone out there is like, man, someone really hated Scott Schletz.
Yes.
He wrote a lot for this. Look what they did to him. There's got to be something going on behind the scenes here that we don't know about.
I actually had friends because it was built as an initial post, and then they could post under it. They were like, my friends were like in character posting, "Yeah, we're gonna get you. We're gonna find you." I'm like, "Oh, that's so cool." But he's kind of playing along with the whole, they killed him. And I'm like, I don't actually think they know I wrote that. They could have thought one of the other authors just decided to use my name. One of the writers, or one of the artists, there's a cover of, I think it is, which one is one of the corporate book, but on the towers, there are names. My name's on there. Jason Hardy's name is on there. It was like, did you get bored and just include random writers' names on buildings in the background? And you don't notice it unless you zoom in on it. But I was, that's weird. Why is that there? It was.
It's a nice to see something like that.
I don't even know who did it.
Really?
Still don't. Really? I could ask, but yeah.
Mystery is nice.
Like, right, mystery's nice, and we all know each other. It actually reminds me of one of the first things I wrote was about the sea dragon, and I wrote some stuff on Boston. And someone from Boston sent a bottle of limoncello to Gen Con to be delivered to me as like a thank you, because they're like, "Oh my God, this was so amazing." It was like my first writer gift. I walked up to the booth, and Jason, the line developer for Catalyst for Shadowrun, was like, "Yeah, someone dropped something off for you." I'm like, "Do I want this?" And they pull up a box. I'm like, "Do I really want it? You want to open that for me?" He's like, "No, you open it and stand over there when you do." But it was nice. It was a chat at one point. They had asked me what my favorite drink was, and I said something about limoncello. And it was a great gift. It's always great to get those as a writer, because so often we hop onto places and they don't like it.
It's got to be interesting getting that response at some point. At some point you make it. And maybe that's the moment where you got people sending you fan gifts and things. So one of the things I was wanting to get into a little bit is, since we have people in the chat that run a lot of games, maybe not necessarily Shadowrun games, what do you think are some key things to focus on if you're trying to get a Shadowrun game right?
Ooh, the big thing I always try and get in mind is to get that shadow. It's in the name.
Yeah.
It is Shadowrun. You're trying to, and that shadow is literally that darkness between the big corporate towers where you hide and where you operate. Like, I love Pink Mohawk Anarchy games, love it, but to me, there's only a realistic shelf life for that. There's a certain point at which the corporations just go, you, and you. Yeah, could you just roll in there in an APC and just start yeah, snipping out the trouble. You don't want to deal with that. And it's that playing in the shadows, but then also, getting with your group and discovering, do they want to be, do they want to help the people?
Mm-hmm.
Do they want to make money? Do they want to help the corporation? Because you make a character who is fully indoctrinated into the corporation that they were raised in. Like, I could fully be, Uris. It's my America version of Uris. Because it's like guns and cowboy hats and, fighting. That's the Ares motto. They have gun corporations and security corporations are the biggest thing. And the character that comes into that. So the key is, for me, keeping it as a shadow game. So, and I'm not saying everybody's got to be in their black trench coats. Everybody's got to think like this is, Sneakers. Think like this is Six Underground. A lot of stuff explodes in it, but he still keeps everything hidden. Keep it in that genre of Ronin. Those stories about the characters who all come together as a team, operate as a team, and don't make it obvious. One of the great examples of when you slide out of the shadows I have is Heat. That great gunfight scene after the bank robbery that almost everyone's seen. That's when you've screwed, and everything just went downhill from that point. And that Shadowrun, once you have to have that gunfight in the street, things are coming. But in Shadowrun, it's also nice because you have that gunfight in the street. You go back to the Barrens where the cops don't follow you, and you reinvent yourself. You erase you dump your old sin, your old identification. You buy yourself a new identification, and you're still the same person, but you hide under the massive corporate umbrella that just hangs out over everything.
So would you say that there's a certain morally gray area that it has to live in to really hit home with Shadowrun? Do you feel like that the characters kind of have to hit that kind of edgy kind of line?
I always like when they skirt that edgy kind of line, because you can go full murder hobo and it makes the game almost turn into like a tabletop miniatures game, or just a whole bunch of dice rolls to shoot each other. It's a D&D hack and slash where no one talks. You just say, I attack, roll the die, I hit, I don't hit. It's just one after the other. But that gray area where you skirt it, and you're in that gray area, but your character really feels like they're doing wrong. You get that chance to role play, and you have those. I've had 2-hour after game conversations with two separate players where they stay in character for 2 hours after the game session so they can role play their angst, their conversation. And that's great in Shadowrun. Shadowrun is fantastic for that because it's modern enough that you can feel connected to it, but yet distant enough that you can disconnect from it and not feel like it, the world you're living in.
Yeah, it has a lot of crossover. Oh, not crossover, I won't say, but there's a lot of stylistic things that are similar to World of Darkness. We have this concept of in the shadows, the veil, masquerade kind of concept. You have this
other great writer.
What's that?
One of our other great writers. He's one of my favorites. Kevin Zarnecki. He was big influence for World of Darkness. And he controls pretty much the vampire lore of Shadowrun and has done a fantastic job.
Nice. Yeah, because that style really does change the dynamics at the table. Once you have some aspect to it, a lot of times I think it has to do with just the being in a city that you live in. Like you said, you can go and you can dump off your ID, but at the end of the day, people know who you are. People will find out who you are, and you do enough stuff in your backyard, it comes back to get you. Yeah. And I think that's something that's missing in a lot of other games like Dungeons and Dragons, for instance, where I go to random dungeon, I slay the monsters, and then I go somewhere else, and you never have to deal with the consequences of your murder hoboism. It's just a feature. Whereas in these, it becomes this very important thing. It's very important to study what your character's doing, why they're doing it, what their motivations are, how they feel about the outcomes of those experiences. And you got all these like seedy interactions you got going on. You're talking to a fence who's telling you what the story is. You got a random guy into the mission. Yeah, all this great stuff. You're trying to figure it out, and there's just so many layers of just potential conspiracy and ambiguous morals and all this stuff that it's a very different and nuanced game. I like it.
Yeah, I like what you said about the people who you interact with. They know you. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't ask people what their social security number is. Mm-hmm. I don't track them digitally. Mm-hmm. When I walk up, I'm like, hey, what's your name? Oh, nice to meet you. The next time you come up and meet me, you still have that same street name. Your social security number changed. But eventually the corporations are going to like connect all these dots, and that's when you gain the moral difficulty of, well, they're going to start pressing on your friend. Those contacts you see every day. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you head over to Soybucks and pick up your latte every day, but they're about to press on your barista to find out what time you come in, and they're going to offer them, a nice little, tip to drop this, little capsule into your drink, mm-hmm. and you're going to stumble out the door and they're going to grab you.
Yep.
And it's that using those connections, and that's all part of the, like you said, you legwork, you look into people's pasts, and while you're playing the game, you do that. Mm-hmm. You dig into who people are, that the story behind it. It's the hard part of being behind the screen in Shadowrun is that you have a whole world of people. It's not just, mm-hmm. okay, in this room you're going to face an Otyug, and over here you got some goblins. Mm-hmm. It's, well, this corporate guy over here, he's thinking of doing this, and that dragon over there is doing this, and this gang leader over there is doing this, and they all revolve around what you're doing. How are you going to deal with that? And which avenue you're going to try and deal with, because you suddenly find out, oh, I have a gang leader, a dragon, and a corporate exec mm-hmm. that I could direct this towards. Which road do I want to take?
Yeah.
All right.
And
what contact do I want?
Go ahead, Dustin. Look, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, so if you're going to GM Shadowrun, I think a lot of people, we got this large wave of new TTRPG players that came in with 5e D&D. And they're used to maps, they're used to NPCs that need to know 3 things before the players never see them again. Like you were kind of talking about. So what do you think the most important part of GM prepping for Shadowrun is? Is it the NPCs at that point?
The NPCs are important for story, and the numbers aren't as important for the NPCs in Shadow. You have a general idea of what might happen if someone decides to punch them. You have a social idea of what happens when someone threatens to punch them. Mm-hmm. I rarely actually worry about what someone's willpower is when someone threatens them. I look and go, how would the Starbucks barista react to being threatened? How would this person react to being threatened? And occasionally you throw in the twists where they react in a way you wouldn't expect. Mm-hmm. And then those characters you learn about. And that's it. That's the big part I always like, and it's important when GMing Shadowrun is don't make them one-dimensional. Don't just make them a source of knowledge. They don't have a little exclamation point above their head that this is my information source, go to it. It's make a person, and use the people you know. We all go to all these places. We've seen how corporate executives talk to us on TV. We've seen how our baristas treat us. We see how people at the laundromat are. We watch. We can use TV examples for how crime works, and some people have run into actual like gang members, and you get a feel for how all that works. And plus, we have so many documentaries these days.
Yeah,
at some point, the Tiger King is going to end up in Shadowrun just because some whacked out dude, and he's going to be contracting somebody to kill Carol Wilson. Yeah.
Oh my god,
can't wait for that one. Ooh.
There is one great thing about the editing in Shadowrun is any too strong of a pop culture reference, it gets cut. They're just like, stop, don't do it.
Just no.
Don't do it.
Just don't.
I tried to work the Supernatural, the Winchester brothers into something once, and they changed their names. I'm like, darn it, Jason, that didn't get past you. I'm like, dude, it was Supernatural. You're not getting that past. A few have. Some of the guys have a little more of a, little out there of their pop culture references, but
You got to work in those shadows, man.
Interesting. Yeah, work in the shadows.
You got to sneak it in there. Oh, man.
It's fleshing it out. As a GM, fleshing out who they're dealing with. Because the story is far more important. You know, a gun at some point will kill someone, except for Shadowrunners who have, maximized their defenses for this. But the new edition, we tried to minimize that with not having huge dice pools that you can just throw me like, oh, you fired a tank? I'm alive. I'm good.
Bucket of like 6,000 D6s.
That was going to kind of get to at some point is that in the older editions of Shadowrun that I played, it was rather notorious for you need more dice than you own. Sometimes to get through around the combat. So over editions, how have you guys worked at streamlining maybe some of those processes so that combat wasn't like a 10-hour affair?
Actually, some of the biggest ones came into the current edition, where we did a lot of streamlining, and we did playtest after playtest, cutting out things that we felt were, rolling the dice is great. I love the feel, but trying to build a giant dice pool and roll it is tough. So if you just limit it to a couple dice and you're rolling once on my side, once on your side versus a series of my roll, your roll, my roll, your the guy over there's roll because he saw what was going on. We tried to slim it back down, and then also tried to slim down like the boost. When you look and you're like, okay, well, I have this bonus and this bonus and this bonus and this bonus and that bonus. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I have a 2 skill and a 1 attribute, and I have 26.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Well, I have a scope and these systems in my body, and I have this and I have that. Yeah, but you're tripping over your own 2 feet, and you don't actually know which end's the barrel.
Yep.
By our little blurbs that we put in things. So it's a lot. It was a lot of streamlining down, and then looking at rules we didn't need.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have to focus on make it more narrative?
We really went narrative focused when we put Anarchy out with the last edition, just to focus on that heavy narrative. And then with 6E, with 6th World Edition, we did try and keep it where it's the narrative's important, thinking and almost planning's important. Edge became a big mechanic that was no longer just it's not just a straight pool you have, it's this constantly flowing effort you make to get the advantage over somebody else. Whether you slide back into the shadows of the alley where your low light vision is better than their natural vision. Whether you decide to cover yourself in garbage or stand next to the heat vent because the troll's coming around the corner in thermographic. Oh, you get edge. And it became very narrative also in the delivery of edge. There's a couple of mechanics to give it, but the rest of it's really just your game master being, so, okay, that's your idea? Take an edge for that?
Nice.
Oh, I'm going to give the advantage to my side. Now, I will be open and honest. After a while of playing with my playtesters, they started getting cheesy, and it became annoying. And I realized quickly the game master could just be like, "No, I win," or use behind the scenes things like, "Oh no, there's a drone right there, and he's using it." But that's why it's a game. It's a game of trust. It's always trust between your game master and your players.
Right. That has to be. Yeah,
I'm here to make a story. You're here to play it, and I'm not. This is not me versus you.
Exactly.
This is you versus the world that I have to create.
Right.
That's an important
thing. To a degree, you want to follow that rule of cool. And it's just a great way of getting to follow the rule of cool, because it's a very simple way of just honoring a good idea and just letting see if it rides.
Yep. I just saw Bad Boys for Life, and if anyone ever said they wanted to jump onto the car wheelie and just roll sideways while shooting at the enemy in pink smoke, I'm throwing some edge at them.
I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, the more cinematic you can make it sound, the more likely your GM's going to be like, I don't even know how this works, but just roll some dice and tell me you got successes. Just do it. As soon as it doesn't slide out of the realm of reality, I'm on the 4th floor, I'm going to leap out the window and fire my guns downward to slow my ascent, but also while shooting him. Well, if we were playing a space game, I'd let you do that. Yeah. Shadowrun in space. Feel free to use your gun to move you around.
but jumping out a window, that doesn't work. But I'll give you one edge just to survive hitting the ground.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important thing to monitor at your table. You know, like if the things that people are doing are adding fun to the table as a whole, like if everyone around the room is going, oh, dude, that's awesome, you're doing it right. You know, if people are sitting around going like,
again, he's doing that again.
Points, here we go. You know, okay, maybe don't give him that. You know, so,
that was the other big slow down and streamline feature for Sixth World was action economy.
Yeah,
we took away the you can go every 17 times. Like if you're really jacked up, you can do like 2 attacks, but the rest of it is you get to attack, and then you have a series of defensive or bonus offensive things you can do with some of those other actions, and everybody kind of cycles through.
Yeah.
It's not, okay, I don't have any initiative bonuses. I'm going to go once, and I'm going to go get the pizza. Anybody need beer? I'm going to hit the liquor run while I'm at it. And I think I can actually come back next session.
Yeah, definitely. It was always an interesting thing, because the last time I tried Shadowrun it's been decades, probably.
It had to been about 3rd edition, right?
I think it might have been, yeah. So, like,
I mean,
that was
it
very...
been a while for us.
Were you counting down editions?
Yeah.
Were you counting down your initiative?
Yeah, I was trying to think about what year it was, and I was like, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was an interesting thing, though, because you did have, you know, obviously those super stacked sheets that, you know, they could just keep on pounding, and they were scary. Like, if you
that
were
was John Wick.
Yeah, you're out of there. Just leave. Just call it a day. Like, you're not supposed to be in this team.
Keanu Reeves' character. Just pick one. It doesn't matter. They all
Right,
work.
yeah. So, as soon as you walk in and you see that person dodging the bullet in slow motion,
just even Ted works. Go with Ted.
Yeah, there you go.
They're all there.
We can handle that
They're
one.
all
Yeah.
there.
Character
Maybe.
is perfect for Shadowrun. Just
He'll time travel and get you anyway. It's, you know, he'll just pick up the gun that he placed there before. It'll be just mayhem. But yeah, it's interesting to see how like systems evolve over time to the sensibilities of the current market. And, you know, obviously we learn a lot as we play the games. And obviously you want your rules to kind of inform or at least mirror the style that you're going for, right? And so like you were saying, you developed the combat rules. So I'm really always interested to see how that process kind of goes. Like, did you start with like, this is what I want it to look like, and this is how the rules will play? Or did you start with like, I have this neat idea that I want to kind of put into play. I think this will be fun. How will it work? Or something else?
I will make the initial, minor correction of I wrote the combat rule. Me and a team of individuals developed them.
Fair.
Because I did get to be on the rules committee. That's part of getting to write it. It starts with where do we want to be? Like, what do we want to do with it? We do start out with a big overall goal and our big goal was, we need this to not be such a glut. We need to streamline. We need to speed it up. We need to make it feel faster, feel more edgy, more Shadowrunning. Mm-hmm. When you're back in the old days and all you're thinking of like one guy like swinging a sword or it's a fight, if you've ever actually watched someone get into a street fight, it takes they spend a lot of time just moving around, hoping to hit something. It's not that one swing, it's long. So in Shadowrun, we're like, no, it has to be fast. It's got to be fast paced. This has to look like an action movie. And that was the overall idea. And then we took the rules we had, because you always look at the previous edition.
Right. You
don't ever really want to go totally off the wall and just,
lose your fan
run down
base.
the street with something and be like, well, we use D6s, now we use D4.
Yep.
Go grab some new floor caltrops for your family. So, it stays with D6s. We still want dice pools that we're building from various things, but what can we trim? So we bounced back and forth on. One of the big things was armor. We bounced back and forth on how armor plays in. Do we want to keep having it add in? Does it add straight into the defense? Does it add into a secondary role? And, it came in, it came out, it came in, it came out, and it was all played literally running the same scene and scenarios over and over and testing how long the dice rolls took for new players. And you would keep pulling in new players. Like, okay, how'd your noobs do? Oh, they were long. Or, oh man, they picked it up really fast. And when you removed a lot of the trying to include a lot of extra dice, like, well, what's this one, add them all together, it became tough. But when you say, hey, what's your armor rating say? Or what's your defense rating say? Oh, okay, you have a 7. My attack rating's only a 2. You get the edge on that. Armor, we're not going to worry about what the armor is doing until complex with like hardened armor and stuff. But it doesn't play. We try. That was a big thing that when you keep having to add stuff in, it slows the game. Adding in modifiers. So the more things we could pull out, and as time goes on, Shadowrun it's a crunchy system.
It definitely is.
Yes,
rules will add on and will increase and tweak and add other portions of systems. In one of the upcoming Magic book, they're working on a magic, like you can make your own spell system, like so you can design them all. We'll give you we give you this spell book, but then it's like what do you want to do? What kind of effect do you want it to have? What's it going to be? And those are the kind of behind the scenes we try and do. Whether the complexity of that fully plays out and goes in there, or whether it's just a spreadsheet behind the scenes that we had to make everything with and slowly work on future book. But it is that you have an idea, you have a framework, you have a goal, and you can't make too many goals. Our goal was ease the glut, speed the system, and
sure, yeah.
I think we did a really good job. I was slow at first too. When you first switch to a new system, it's not the fastest. But at this point, I've played every edition, all the way from having to remember what 3M2 is and that first edition, Grognard game, all the way to now. And I might be older. I might have played a lot more games, but this is it's faster.
Yeah.
It's always faster and it's more cinematic. Now, if you just want to crunch numbers, it has become not the tactical primary thing for you. If you want to think tactically, if you want to say, I'm going to make sure I'm taking cover behind this barrel, you say, I'm going to make sure I'm running for that space over there so that they can't see me, it's great. But if you're going to just constantly, if you're focused on getting what your numbers can add up for,
right?
We've alienated a few people.
Streamlined a little bit. Yeah.
Right, we've alienated them streamlined, but we still try and bring them back because Shadowrun it's a crunchy game, but people come to it because of the fluff. Because you have 30 years of history, you have
a lot of meat there.
Novels, you have every book that comes out, adds more story to the game. I was recently rereading something just to glance through it, and I'm like, wow, I've been reading for 5 minutes, and I have 3 campaigns in my head from random comment.
That really helps. I mean, the flavor is definitely necessary to kind of get those wheels moving. One of the things we were talking about there, though, is that, you have changed kind of dynamics a little bit. And one of the things I remember was that the people that I knew who played Shadowrun were really into the gear and the technology and what it could do and what, advantages you can generate out of that. Do you feel like that's still really a heavy emphasis there, or you feel like that's been kind of streamlined away a little bit?
It got some streamlining in that we focused a lot of it on edge bonuses instead of dice bonuses. But an edge bonus could be a dice bonus. It could be a reroll of dice. It could be, an advantage here and there. So, and it can build up over time as, you build up your tactical advantage and then just, break out at the right moment. So instead of it just being straight numbers like this device, this device, this device, they all add up together. Now, I'll be able to get edge from this one this round, and then next round I'm going to grab the edge from this one, and then I'm going to go into my third round, and I got this. I'm taking this guy down.
Nice. And
it's just that planning ahead, and all the while you're still firing off a shot here and there because you have the action to do it. Spend an action to do this. Spend some minors to build up your edge pool, and then go to town.
Yeah. So does it still feel like the equipment feels different from one another? Like, so if I had one type of gun versus another, do they feel different to each other?
They do. We worked a lot in trying to make, guns and gear. One of the big reasons that the guns and gear is big in the books is the art. The visual of like, this is what this gun looks like. This is what this gun looks like. So we had to kind of go along with that idea, that trying to keep it, have the rules change between them, but also
Keep it
I
simple.
always like to base things on simple, but also in some reality. So if the picture comes out and it's a very short-barreled, firearm, I'm gonna bring its range in a little bit, and I'm gonna tweak its stats for that. So if you want to be the guy who only fights close range, there's going to be some optimal picks for you. If you want a wide range, there's some, and if you want to just be at long range, there's some. But it gives each piece of gear a different bit of flavor in a different role in the world.
Right.
It's not that every gun can do the same thing. Not just range. I'm like, well, I want to shoot short. It's a pistol. I want to go a little further. I get a submachine gun, then a rifle, then a sniper rifle. If I want to shoot a whole room, it's a shotgun.
Definitely.
So you're now thinking in terms of, well, my character is focused on this narrow range, but I don't want to be left in the dust when something's getting a little further. So you look at the guns that actually can get a little further, and there's variation among them. It was one of the places we played to have that variation in gear, because when you're just playing with numbers, that's all it is. It's just playing with numbers.
Right.
Being like, where can I have an advantage? Where can I have a disadvantage? Where is this going to play into the game? And we tried to mix, mechanics with a little bit of character role play of what role do you want to play? Where do you want to be? What piece of gear do you need?
Yeah, I think it's really important. Go ahead, Dustin.
I was going to say, so when you think about how much we've advanced in what we can do with the human body over the course of since the 90s, really, when, like I said, when Shadowrun's come around, some things that were futuristic ideas then are a little closer to reality now, and we've invented new other things that no one even thought about then. So when you're writing a new edition and you're trying to go tech into the future yet again, like how it was there, has there been anything that you wrote that like has kind of come, you're like, oh, that's kind of, they actually do this now, so we got to push it further, because you still want it to be fantasy in that way. Even on the tech end, you want the tech to still be somewhat fantasy. So how, like with Wi-Fi, everything else, like how does that change your tech for where you want to send it with a new edition?
Well, the nice thing with tech has always been, if we want to limit tech, we have a really easy way. We just say the mega corporations don't let you have it.
True.
Like if the company
have it,
they have it, but you don't get it, and then you get it in the shadows, so that adds that little shadow aspect. But it's that whole like, you can control how tech goes story-wise as to what the corporations are building, because while they want to beat out somebody else, they don't want this to become so widespread that the regular people have it. But we always have to we have to try and be looking at advances in science and looking at what's next. The big change along the way of Shadowrun was bio. Going from cyberware to bioware, looking at things. Oh, we're learning more about genetic manipulation, and now you got geneware, and then nanoware. Like it's just a bunch of nanites running through your body. Like, I haven't seen the movie, but the Bloodshot literally looks like, oh, this is nanotechnology. Your body is full of nanites, and you break a part off, and they rebuild it for you. Oh, perfect. That's very Shadowrunning.
Totally. Man.
But it's always that. Whenever you're trying to look at the future, you're trying to guess what's going to be next. The only current slight push forward in tech of Shadowrun versus modern is because of the whole CFD thing and artificial intelligences living inside human bodies, and them like focusing on being used to advance tech. We're throwing a few advances in that way, but it's all advances that are focused on the corporations having. They have them first. Mm-hmm. Runners can then slowly get them and kind of build on it that way.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's a lot of being a dork and reading science papers and seeing what's coming up and trying to like extrapolate from that.
For sure.
Which is hard to do at this point, because like a lot of our next phases and advances are beyond what we're thinking in science.
They just go. You
already have arms and eyes, and it's like, okay, can I spend a few days visiting DARPA? You guys mind? Just let me wander around. I just want to see what you guys are working on. What can I include in my Shadowrun game?
Well, what's been amazing to me throughout the years is that Shadowrun has been uncannily accurate of what
That's what I
is
was
going to
gonna
happen.
ask.
Like I
I was
remember
going to ask
reading.
if there's anything he's written that's actually come to be.
Well, I remember in particular, like there was one with back in the day in the early '90s. It was talking about Chicago, and they were talking about like where neighborhoods were, and like the nature of like who socioeconomically lives in different parts of the city. And then 5 years later, that's exactly what happened. It was like a completely inverted north side, south side. It was just like, what? Like, you need to be working the stock market, my friend. Like whoever's putting this together is an oracle or something. It's bizarre, but I guess it just comes with really good research.
Well, but they started here, and they probably looked out their window and saw what was happening to the neighborhood they were in, and like, oh no, we're just gonna go up here. That's gonna go because everything, gentrification swaps out neighborhoods all over the place. Chicago is perpetually changing. I live here.
Yeah,
and it. I don't know, where are you guys at?
I'm no longer in
Southern
Chicago, but he's in Southern Illinois. I'm in Indianapolis now.
Oh, all right.
I recently moved out, so I was in Chicago as of a couple months ago. But
Okay.
I live in that fantastical part of Illinois we refer to as not Chicago.
Yes. There's two parts of Illinois.
When you're from Illinois, they say you're from Chicago, and I have to say, no, I'm not from Chicago. I'm from the rest of the state.
and that's if they don't respond to you and say, "You're from Illinois? I'm not talking to you anymore."
True.
So I just lied to him now and tell him I'm from really far West Indiana. West
I'm from
Indiana.
West Indiana.
West Indiana. Not before you get to East Iowa.
A little South Wisconsin, just everywhere.
Just everywhere but there. Yeah. I was always really interested in some of the technology that was included in the game, though. Like, because the evolution of like the computerware and hacking and stuff, and how to make those parts of the game work as another element. Like rigging and hacking definitely separates the party in the old editions. But I always found it really interesting to see the dynamics there, because it definitely moved away from this physical, jack in to Wi-Fi kind of situation where, your tech is always with you. We're like nowadays where our phones live in our hand. And, in this case, I guess it's, cyberware, showing it right in your retina. But, it's fascinating to me how that affects a culture. Like obviously cell phones have really changed the way we go day to day. But like, seeing the culture in the game in those, more analog, plug a cord in, I need my buddy watching my back while I'm jacked in because, we're literally in the mainframe room, like, to having another scenario where now there's less restrictions on where you can and cannot interact. It changes the game flow and it changes culture a lot, and I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah, the cultural aspect of it is interesting. Just for as we changed and became a more wireless culture, trying to make the game match that, but then still add some level of connectivity on the team. Mm-hmm. The hacker who just plugs in, gets you all your info, or plugs in and is running the operation from a distant location where sometimes you left someone with them, or sometimes you didn't, or they're out in the van, and trying to adapt that with modern technology. And even now, like in the newer editions, we've tried to pull it a little bit closer. We have you have wireless, but you have a certain limit on how far that's going to go. There's Wi-Fi inhibiting stuff has been huge, and it's a paint. You put it on your walls, keeps your signal from going next door. And the corporations say it's to keep people from stealing your information, but it's really to keep people from stealing their information.
And I think that's important for storytelling purposes too. Again,
if you're bouncing off a satellite, I mean, you're immediately giving it to the corporation. It's not. There's no privately owned satellites, so I mean, it's all it's all corporation at that point. So Wi-Fi, you're dealing with towers, you're dealing with satellites. You immediately know you're funneling it through a corporation somewhere.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, and the point I was going to make there was I think that it's really interesting. Putting these limitations on communication in particular, I think is important for a dark, edgy kind of shadow game. Like Dustin and I, we ran a LARP in Champaign for Vampire for quite a while. And, you could see the evolution of technology. Once people started having cell phones on them that had, internet access, suddenly everyone's like, oh, my character just does this. I know what's going on, right?
I triangulate their position on the satellites, and I find them.
Yeah. And all of a sudden your
Google
stories are
everything I need.
Yeah, and so you're like, well, this was supposed to be an interesting story, but okay, sure. Yeah, your technology beat me. But it's really nice whenever a system is putting components in that says, hey, you could still tell a cool investigation story. You could still tell kind of a gumshoe thing that happens, I don't know. It's a nice touch. I like that a lot.
Yeah, you can always add it in. Hackers are out. Corporations have hackers. They're erasing things and protecting things and keeping stuff from getting other places, so you can still keep that element of, when the guy says, I'm going to triangulate his position, and all of a sudden he goes to ping his name, some hacker somewhere pulls up and goes, wait, somebody's pinging his name, and his phone explodes in his hand. Because what was I doing? Well, you angered the corporate gods. They just blew up your phone for you. Because the bad guys have the same things that the good guys do. In that, calling the corporations the bad guys. And usually more. They have more bandwidth, they have more people, they have more tech, they have more wage slaves to do their job.
Yeah, and that inequity is a very central theme as well.
Huge. That's why places like the Barrens exist. It's literally, it's beyond, we know what rundown neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. I've been to places in, the city of Chicago that are pretty destitute. You wouldn't want to be. However, that's still nothing compared to the extremes of Shadowrun, where it's literally like garbage can fires, intermittent electricity that's being stolen from lines under the ground that are old, and it's a different era. It's like stepping back. It's getting that little bit of a Wild West feel to it. You can. Suddenly you're a Baron's cowboy. You have to switch from being, suit and tie to, street leathers and, gun constantly in your hand. Mm-hmm. And it adds a good role-playing aspect for that, too, for players who want to play between the two. Chicago is always good for that because you have, they made the CZ, kind of wiped out the actual city of Chicago, but then rebuilt everything around it. Yep. And with everything around it, you still have a corporate enclave of life. And then you have a wall, and then you have hell.
Oh, man. Well, and you think about that just when you go to a weird neighborhood. I lived on the west side of Chicago for a while there. So, yeah, welcome to that kind of situation. But it's interesting when you start to interact with, systems, that are supposed to be in play, like police, for instance. It takes on a different dynamic when you live in that side of the city. Suddenly they're not stopping by and saying hello. They're stopping by and eyeing you down. You're getting your bag searched every time you're walking home from class. It's a weird experience. And then in a Shadowrun kind of scenario, that whole corporate power, every person that's enforcing laws now isn't really out there for your good. They're out there for their corporation's good, and everyone knows that. Every single interaction now is very uncomfortable.
Every runner knows. All of the rest of the people just believe that their corporation is totally. They're the best people in the world. They know it all. They protect me. They keep me safe from all you horrible people out there and those other evil corporations. Love this sellout. One of my favorite stories that I always tell people, neighborhoods and having that experience, as I was between 16 and 17. I just had a driver's license.
Uh-huh.
I was with my friends, and I was driving in an Astro van, and we were heading downtown, but we were heading from down south, and for some reason, I decided to get off at some exit because of traffic, and we roll by the sign that says Cabrini Green.
Yeah, oops.
And I pull up to a stop sign, and a squad car pulls up next, rolls his window down about 2 inches, and they're inside their car in, their full armor, the big puffy armor, and I'm like, that's weird. And they're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, nothing, because I rolled my window all the way down. So they obviously knew I wasn't there to, buy drugs or anything else.
Right.
It was a wrong turn. And I rolled the window all the way down. They're like, just follow us. Don't stop. When we wave, take that exit. And they rolled through 6 blocks of stop signs and everything else, their lights on, and me following them. And me and my friends feeling like we were super cool. Yeah. And then getting back on the 94 and being like, yeah, that could have gone a totally different way.
Yeah.
We could have been a statistic of 6 stupid suburban white kids dead in the inner city.
Man, it gets real fast sometimes in life. And of course, that's where we live in the games. You know, that's where the attention is. But God,
is it safe to say that Shadowrun in general typically is a bigger city setting when you're going to run this game? I mean, you don't probably see a lot of overland travel. You don't see a lot of that necessarily going on, or is it airplane flights to remote locations for something?
There's the mix of you have the big urban environments, so you have your giant sprawls and your runs go on there. But because you have magic and because you have these corporations that always want to steal from each other, you have the ability to, like, you know, say there's a 6-car or a 6-truck hauler that's, you know, a 6-trailer hauler that's rolling across the, you know, western U.S. on the big open roads that you need to, you know, steal whatever cargo's on. You have that, you know, Mad Max style. Or you have the, hey, we need these runes that are currently, you know, we think there's an artifact in them. We need you to go down there. And suddenly you find out that the runes are no longer runes. There's a culture that's there, or there's people that's there, there's another corporation that's there. And so you get to you can add in those faraway locations. And then the more global Shadowruns become, the more authors put things in, and you add the culture of those locations. At the same time, you're adding the places themselves. So you get a lot of variety that's outside of just massive urban areas. And you even get to enjoy, you know, some great stories told about massive urban areas that aren't ours. You know, Neo Tokyo being one of the more recent settings. The culture is totally different, but yet it's still just a big urban city, and you get that totally different feel. You know, one of my favorite things about it is very fake. Like,
sorry, I may have to cut you off here
we
for
got
just
some
a moment.
notifications here we got to talk about real quick. First and foremost, thank you to Crimson Blades for the raid. We saw it. We didn't miss you in there.
Yep,
but our man Fruitzilla just showed up and just dropped 25 tier 1 subs on the people.
Thank you.
After, of course, subbing himself for the 17th consecutive month. So, Fruitzilla, we love you. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for all the gift subs.
Yeah,
and everyone out there who just got a gift sub, if you're there and you're paying attention, start lighting up that Fruitzilla emote you just got for it. So
it's a little like this.
He has his own emote around here, and you can use it if you find it down there. There it is. That's right. The little Fruitzilla with its apple head hanging out there.
That's right. I forgot to turn on the notifications. I do still see that we did get 2 new follows, by the way. So thank you for that. One Penguin and King Country X21. Much appreciated.
They came over with Crimson Blades raid, I believe. So
yeah, that was much appreciated.
Again for the raid.
Glad to have you all.
Follows.
Yeah, so I slapped together the whole system today because our normal tech guy is out taking care of his birthday wife, you know. So
his wife
very
has a birthday today.
Take care of it, the family, do the right thing. And I am a little bit of a noob at running the scene, so I forgot the notifications. Sorry, guys.
We've both done it a few times, but we've added stuff to the program since then with the web capture and everything else. So we're lucky to get this show on the road without Clint around here, to be honest. We're fortunate this is even happening right now.
Yeah.
So.
But so
he's our decker. He's our decker for our personal run. He's the decker. So.
Is that what happened on my tech? It's because Clint wasn't here, wasn't working.
He wasn't here, so it just the whole life just went out of it. You know, it's just gone. Got pulled out. But I really enjoy what can be done in a Shadowrun game. Like it's close enough to now, but it's still not. It's still different. It's still novel. It's still fantasy in a loose term, I guess. Fiction, I guess, in a way. Or it is fiction. I don't know what I'm saying. But it's fascinating because it just opens up different types of experiences. Like you were saying, you can get into these other cultures. You can get into what makes them different, but also what brings them back to being the same. You know, like the big sprawling urban setting. There is a character there that is the monolithic buildings and the skyline and the geography of it, and the gridlock, and these are important I am at a loss for my words right now. Sorry. They're important aspects of the game, though. They set a nice cast of characters for you that you don't get in some other styles of games like Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. Yeah, the setting is huge, and the setting, being able to play with that is another big aspect or strange aspect is arcologies, which are basically just massive self-contained cities. Mm-hmm. And one of the coolest storylines, Shadowrun ever did was the Renraku arcology, and it basically turned this massive city into a pseudo dungeon crawl where you hope you might get out. We did a tournament for it last year, and it's brutal when you turn the world against the people, but your world is something like that, something so big, something so monolithic.
Oh man, I'm just imagining living in one of these things. Just a massive skyscraper that is multiple massive cities blocks wide. Thousands upon thousands of people stacked on each other, different biomes inside, the whole nine. Businesses all over there. You never have to leave at any point to get anything. You're the next door neighbor arcology, you may not even know what's in there.
It's like they started building all the superstructures like the Burj Khalifa. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well done. You've now managed to make probably the smallest of the arcologies in Shadowrun. When they rewrote Chicago, mm-hmm. One of the big things they did is they knocked the Sears Tower down on the first time. It was a terrorist attack, which is always cool when you're driving into the city and you look at the Sears Tower and you're a Shadowrun player and you're like, that doesn't exist in Shadowrun.
That's gone.
And then you look south and you realize that south there would be a almost identical structure that's 3 times the height of, and that's what they kind of rebuilt just to be like, hey, look, we can, so we do, and it's surrounded by other structures that are that big. Everything is so huge, and you could have entire campaigns go on inside an arcology. I've run a kids campaign where it was a bunch of they were between the ages of 8 and 12, and they were arcology kids, and they just lived a Shadowrun game inside their inside the arcology.
Oh man, that'd be so strange. Just seeing how that experience of growing up.
It was really weird because nobody ever had a. They did a lot of hacking and a lot of sneaking around, stealing stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's nice.
So it wasn't I think one person got shot at one point, but that was it.
Yeah.
Like the Harry Potter of Shadowrun.
Yeah, very much.
That's kind of what you're dealing with at that point.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, Canadian Wolverine. Very much like Judge Dredd, I guess. Yeah.
The first 4 books.
Yeah. Judge Dredd's like the super structures. First time I saw it, I was like, that's what an arcology would look like.
Yeah.
A whole other city trapped in there.
Oh man.
I think he very much lives in a Shadowrun style world.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
yeah, Judge Dredd. Yeah,
I mean, there's some very well-known cyberpunk pop culture material. If you wanted to get into this sort of world, and you were like, "Here's what you need to watch to get into this, to set the tone, to understand it." What's your go-to to give to new people?
There's a couple
to
in
say,
my head
here's what you're shooting for.
Luckily, just recently, Netflix made Altered Carbon.
Yep.
And
so good.
So good. The sleeving concept is just, it's like the next step of the rich, especially now that CFD can rewrite AIs and you can write people and sleeving is like the next step of it. When I saw Altered Carbon, I never read the books. I saw it, I'm like, oh God, that's basically where Shadowrun's going to go. And it's going to look like we stole the idea. But it's been around for a long time. People moving from body to body is not a new thing. But that's one of the first ones now that it's new that I mentioned, because it just covers so many aspects. And then if I'm going to go old school, I'd say Johnny Mnemonic.
Yep, there it is.
I'm like, here's Johnny Mnemonic. Imagine that some of these people are orcs and trolls and elves and dwarves. But that glitchy, that glitchy person with the really bad cyber job, oh yeah, that was some streetwires that they couldn't afford to pay for, but they wanted to be fast. And they're really good at role-playing at that point.
That's right.
Yeah, Bright is a great way to do the... Yeah. Oh, hacking.
Dolphin.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hacking was perfect in there. And then any form of team-based story. Like I've talked about Ronin and Six Underground that recently another Netflix thing came out. Heat, any of those, a group of people come together, they accomplish a mission. Even Tears of the Sun is a merc camp there where one of the mercs suddenly decides to grow a conscience, and matches into Shadowrun. The stories you can tell there very well.
Heist films in general are good.
Oh, heist films usually, yeah.
Any heist film, because it's always a team cut, like Ocean's 11.
Oh, yeah.
Ever getting the team together, right? Like,
yeah. Even Money Heist or Tower Heist that are just complete comedies, and that often is what Shadowrun turns into. Spend a whole bunch of time making up a really cool plan, and then it turns into the Keystone Cop.
I don't know if you remember the old Shadowrun commercial in the 80s or early 90s, but if you haven't seen that one recently, you should definitely go check it out. It is amazing. It's live action. Are you talking about the campy one with the big action muscle? Yes. Yep. Muscle. Yeah. That was They're
fantastic.
like fake walking.
I have not seen this. I'm going to have to watch it when we're done here tonight.
It is amazing. It is the stuff of legends. I loved it so much.
I will state that there will soon be something better that could look quite a bit like Shadowrun. That will be that, but it won't say that. But it will be a cool trailer that looks awesome and is very. It touches on a lot of elements of that fantasy cyberpunk future world.
I look forward to seeing that. That's going to be awesome. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that people can go into to get involved in the game. Obviously, there's lots of editions of the books out there. You can go pick them up. If I was thinking ahead, I would have got us an Amazon link to want to put it down in the panels, but I just thought of it, so sorry about that. Yeah, definitely go check it out. If you haven't got it, the current stuff out there, you definitely want to go take a look, because it sounds like it's pretty improved over the originals. And I would say the
newest edition released about this time last year, wasn't it? Or was it at Gen Con? Right at Gen Con, it released last year?
Yep.
The sixth
last year Gen Con.
World 6th edition, right?
6th World edition. Because the 6th World, they played on the 6th World. They also played on the cool, it's the 30th anniversary, so we have our cool XXX logo that we like to put on things.
That's used for good one.
Looks like it belongs on a CD bar in some, Baron and Shadowruns, but yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to remember that is the cyberpunk game ever going to come out?
That's a whole.
It's a different thing, but the style.
I wish every time I see things for that, I'm yes, I'll go immerse myself in that.
So I mean, there's a lot of this sort of stuff, the cyberpunky kind of feel stuff that seems to be in the zeitgeist right now. So definitely go out there and check out those things, figure out stories you can tell in this sort of setting, because it's a lot of fun. I am looking forward to one of our guys in our group deciding to run this at some point, because I know Cameron keeps talking about it.
Too.
We know
which guy it's going to be, but I definitely would be interested in trying out a 6C Shadowrun game sometime.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could spotlight it. We could talk about what to do with spotlights.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Spotlight for us, we take a game that we haven't played. We get. If we're lucky, we find somebody who knows a lot about the game that wants to run a game for us.
Like this guy right here. Look at him.
Nice.
This guy is waving. Hello.
Maybe,
yes, please.
Maybe he could come run us through one of them tournament modules. That Escape from Chicago sounds pretty awesome. Let's do it.
Sure does. Get us together, get a chance to show off the game a little bit, show some people who haven't had a chance to play it, how it plays, and hopefully sell some content while we're at it. So. For people who are trying to get into it, where should they start in terms of books besides just the core book? Is there anything else accessory-wise they should be getting into?
Luckily, the nice thing about it, when we make the new edition, the core book gives you a solid background. Right now we have 30 Nights and Cutting Black that are the current story arc that they're promoting. That's kind of the big thing that we're working with right now, where the UCAS, what would be the USA, has a series of rolling blackouts in different cities. Let's hope this doesn't come to fruition. And it's entire patches of cities just go tech dark and it rolls all over, and no one really knows why. And what kind of craziness occurs in the shadows. Imagine what occurs in the dark.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a big one. Detroit ends up rolling over. A couple mega corporations start to move around. So we get to have a lot of fun with it. And so I would say the main book, and then Cutting Black and 30 Days of Night is what they call it. But yeah, those are the new edition items. And I always promote, buying the cool little like tokens and cool dice that are, go to Catalyst's game store.
Yeah, load up on your D6s for sure.
I was gonna say,
Yes, get lots of D6s. And
raid your game closet, get your Monopoly dice, get the dice out of every other game that you
I
own.
would get those cubes of like all the little tiny guys. So if you have access to, I'll see if I can grab one next to a bigger
Instead
one.
of old Warhammer dice, man.
Yeah, these
Those
little
tiny
dudes.
little D6s we use for Warhammer for the war game.
They're not tiny.
there have been a number of times that the direction dice end up hitting my table. And, hey, get your Warhammer dice off my Shadowrun table. But the grenade goes that way. I'm like,
But they're so handy. I mean,
Yeah,
you
it's
can
so
put
easy.
3 of them in the palm of your hand and just.
yep, they all blend together. But yeah, Shadowrun is a game of D6s. It is not as insane as it used to be, but it'll always get, and you can always slide back to a previous edition and build into that, so you can have giant handfuls of dice until we decide to do it. And I always do recommend having some kind of little chip. Yeah, they are. It's all still out there.
That's what you like. It's still out there.
Oh.
Yeah,
Well, and that's what's the nice thing about Shadowrun is every old book's the story that we put in it still matters. It
does,
still rolls forward. You get all that history.
Mm.
That was actually, earlier you talked what really hooked me in the game. Reading the history, like
Oh yeah.
sitting down and just reading a game book and enjoying that opening section. One of the things that always drew me to Deadlands was that they had that little tombstone epitaph that you could read and be like, oh, this is the cool background, the in-world stuff. And then you get to the rules. But it's always cool to have that part that lures you in, that makes you feel like you're there.
Gets you real excited to play.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Jeff, it's that time.
it is that time somehow. Yeah.
We have rolled around here to the end. So, Scott, once again, why don't you tell the good people out there where we can find you?
I have a Patreon of my own. I also have my first novel on Amazon called Jester's Smile. I am working on more in my own setting called the Netherworld setting. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic, very similar to Shadowrun, but with its own interconnected worlds feel and not near as much tech, because I wanted to feel a little more modern, magic than too far in the future magic. And then a second one that's called Shattered Sky that I'm currently working on and developing. I have stories on my Patreon for it, where an asteroid hit the moon and created all sorts of chaos on Earth. So get a little post-apocalyptic with some disaster setting there.
That'll do the
The
trick.
big place you find me currently. Yeah.
So your Patreon, when they're looking for it, how do they find it? Like, what's the specific name of it?
My name.
Just your name.
Okay,
Alright.
so that's an easy one to find. Well, we'll make sure we get a link. For
Much
that
like
to
I
YouTube.
made me the Scott Schletz. Yeah. I was trying to, look up links and things to put in here, but I was afraid that I would open up Safari, my computer would have too much memory going and would freeze. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll wait. Maybe they'll send it in later. Maybe not.
With our pre-show tech issues, yeah, we'll find the links. We'll get them. We'll make sure when this gets up onto YouTube, everywhere else, that stuff's in there for you, so that people can find you that way.
Excellent.
Yeah, it'll be all down in the description. So if you're watching this later and you want to find that information, just go in the description. I'm going to have all the links that I can in there. You'll see it down there somewhere whenever it's on YouTube. And definitely check out those channels for them. You want to go to the Patreon, show some support. Writers are the lifeblood of the gaming industry, obviously.
That's right.
If we want to keep the hobby alive, you got to buy those books. You got to keep them going. And,
This is
Yes.
a tough time for all of them.
Buy the books.
yes.
All those places you can download them and pirate them. I know it's Shadowrun, but don't pirate the books. It's terrible. It's very thematic, but don't do it.
Save it for in the game. Save
It's never in the game.
First thing your character does in Shadowrun is pirate the Shadowrun book.
Torrent every Shadowrun book in existence.
Collect all the viruses.
Torrent all the D&D games. Wait, what are we playing? No, our Shadowrunners. We're going to sit down. We're going to play D&D. What?
This is crazy town.
We've done it before.
Yeah.
We've all done it before.
Of course we have. So good. So yeah.
End of the world games were great to play.
Oh, they are. They're wonderful. So audience, make sure you check it out. Show some support. get out there, try your own Shadowrun game. Tell us how those go. I would love to hear it. We'll hopefully have a section in our Discord. And if you aren't already part of the Discord and you would like to become part of the Discord, let's see if my commands are actually working.
If you do have some Shadowrun questions, there are several Facebook groups you can join and ask questions. The guys there are great and often poke me and be like, what's the actual answer to that? I recently had to play I don't want to be a schmuck, but I wrote it. But this is what I really intended. This is what the rules intended.
You gotta love that situation.
Uh-huh. I'm like, I always feel bad. I'm like, I'm open myself up to a can of worms.
Good. That's always business.
If they're asking, though, they're looking for it.
Yeah.
It's the people who are really not following the spirit of the rules or whatever, they ain't asking. You don't know what they're doing.
No, but they're making comments.
Yeah,
they're giving their versions of the rules.
They're responding to someone else later, right? That's what they're actually doing on those forums.
Well, thank you guys. This has been great. I get my thank you in before we suddenly before my computer breaks and goes away.
Well, thank you very much for coming. If you're looking at maybe you missed part of this earlier, or if you want to show this off to other people later on after the broadcast here, we will have it up on YouTube, and there's a link for that. You will find all of our past broadcasts. We also are on iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Spotify these days. So this will appear on there once I have gotten off my ass and done the work. And so you'll find it on there, hopefully. If you missed part of it, don't worry. It's still there for you. We'll get it out to you. Let's see, what else we got that we need to plug?
Let's talk about our programming for the week, Jeff.
There we go.
Tomorrow night, 8 p.m., Cameron will be here with Bardic Knowledge, our TTRPG music composition show, where he makes music for our games live on screen. You can watch him make all kinds of cool music that will appear in our Everstorm game. That's the game he's currently writing for music. Wednesday night, 10 p.m., Pathfinder 2, 2nd edition. Jeff will be back at the helm. We have a very quirky cast of characters.
Boy, howdy.
That we are just abusing Jeff with. And as we get through the Fall of Plaguestone module, that as our first attempt at Pathfinder 2nd edition. So Thursday, we're back to World War Z for video game night. So Jeff, Clint, Tim, Cameron will be playing some World War Z Thursday night, 9 p.m. I think you guys usually start for that one.
That's correct. And there's a lot of interaction in the game. So if you guys want to have us do stupid game voices while we do it, that's the appeal. You give us a voice, we do our best not to completely embarrass ourselves, and we always fail. But we shoot zombies in character, and it's great.
Now, it is entirely possible that Levi will grace us with another episode of DM'd Art, where he makes art for our games. You can watch him Photoshop our characters. We never know when. He could do it right as soon as this is over. It could be tomorrow. It could be Friday. We never know when Levi's going to do it. He is the king of chaos. He shows up when he feels like, and you get an extra stream out of it. Probably sometime this week. And then, of course, next Saturday, Everstorm returns. He has not titled the next episode yet, but we'll get that out soon. But it's going to have a lot to do with all these extra skeezers we just found. So that's where we're at right now. So tune in next Saturday, 10 p.m. for Everstorm.
That's a 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons game, by the way, if you don't know.
That is high fantasy, high seas. It's a good time. So tune in for all of that. That takes care of all of our programming here. Of course, check out the other members of our stream team down there. The panels, you'll find links to them all. We've got Liching Hour, the Grouch Couch. We have Dragons in the Dining Room. Those are all people who just participated in that DCC tournament. So go back, find their VODs, watch their runs of the same dungeon, watch our run of the dungeon.
Watch all of us suffer. It was a lot of suffering.
It was brutal. DM Chuck from Defenders of Kobold is my hero.
Yeah, murder.
So, it was fantastic. We also have a couple of newer members to the stream team. I don't want to leave out. We have Gangrez and Spooky Sprinkles. Both of them do some art, some video games, some other stuff. So check out everybody on the stream team. They all have. We're all very wildly different in a lot of really cool ways. So check them all out. They do really good stuff. And Jeff, why don't we talk a little bit about your dad's art here, and then we'll get on out of here, and I'll find someone to raid.
Absolutely. Before I do that, I want to make sure, if I didn't say before, I thought I said it, but thank you very much for coming. Appreciate you being on the show tonight. It's been a blast. And, yeah.
Anytime.
We'll definitely have to have you come back to run that game, because I want to play. What I just linked there, though, that is a link to support an artist, David Lee Pancake, who happens to be my dad. So he is an artist, does full-time art nowadays. He and my mom go to conventions to sell his artwork, which are primarily of the dragon-related objects. He's a sculptor. You probably have seen him if you've ever been to a convention, because he is at all of them. He typically is at about 50 conventions a year, and it's a lot. However, this year, as you probably have been aware, maybe you guys have noticed, there's a pandemic going on, and there's not a lot of conventions. So everything has been converted onto an online situation for us, and we'd like to make sure that if you haven't seen his art, if you're looking for something pretty kick-ass for your gaming room, follow those links. So davidleepancake.com gets you to his web store. He also has a Patreon, which is linked right there, where you can get all kinds of discount codes. You can get access to unique items that are only going to be sold through the Patreon. You get behind-the-scenes making videos, where he's doing a little bit of teaching, a little bit just showing you the process of how these things are put together. And if you go for the really big top tier, there's a layaway program for getting the big, gigantic dragon trophies. So they're literally the dragon head attached to a wooden plaque, just ready to rock, and they're freaking massive and awesome. So it makes it a lot more accessible for you. I'd go pick it up, but I had a catastrophe the other day, and I don't want to do it again. So, but they are amazing. Definitely go check them out. Hey, thank you for the follow there, Lord Arctic. Much appreciated. And yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. There's jewelry, there's 2D art, there's a lot of sculptures. He's got a lot of stuff, and I'm biased, obviously, but he's won enough awards at this point that I can honestly say he's an amazing artist, and he gets it going. So do we have a raid target, Dustin?
Well, I had one, and then they just decided to raid someone else. So I'm switching up here. We're going to hit Quests and Chaos. They're playing
Quests and Chaos.
5e, it looks like here. So we're going to go ahead. Oh, I got to redo this. Hold on.
Oh, okay. Well, he's figuring that out. For those of you about to ride with us across there, I want to say thank you so much for joining us for tonight's episode. It wouldn't be the same without the audience and you guys participating in there and hanging out with us. So thank you for your questions and comments as you kind of went through there. Hope to see you more. Right. Join that Discord.
Get those raid icons ready. Here we go.
Let them know we're coming.